is a scholar and a Mideast scholar at that. Also a presidential historian, our former colleague from KGO Radio, the great John Rothman. Hi, John.
How are you?
Nice to have you here.
Lovely remembrance of Ted Turner. And, of course, when you and I talked earlier, the thing that always stood out in my mind was his acquisition of all those classic movies. And to this day, it is just a marvelous thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point that John's making. The decision he made to acquire the libraries is what you're talking about. And then
Turner
he run those classic movies. Yeah. And that morphed into TCM, the Turner Classic Movies channel. Yeah.
Exactly.
I just went to their film festival over the weekend. Really terrific stuff.
By the way, I used to see Ted Turner here in San Francisco because of his boating. Of
course, sure.
One of the great races was right here in San Francisco. In fact, I think Kim ran a picture of him at the Candlestick Park.
That's wild. Yeah. Well, I want to get right into the war in Iran in a moment. But first, I want to ask you, because politics is one of your lanes, Trump-backed candidates romp to wins in Indiana Senate races is the headline in the Indiana Capitol Chronicle. And that's just one of the states in which Trump helped primary those that he felt opposed him on various issues. I was saying before, in a way, this is significant, and in another way, it doesn't matter. Can you talk about that?
It doesn't affect his popularity, but it does tell you what money means. Donald Trump spent millions and millions of dollars in Indiana to punish, it's his retribution campaign, those Republicans who voted against the redistricting. It is a lesson in the fact that if you have enough money and you're willing to use your power, you can make a difference. And he did. I don't think it affects his popularity nationally. The massive decline of Donald Trump's popularity transcends what happens in a state senator's race in Indiana.
Yeah, well, he's at record low approval ratings. But let me ask you just about the politics, though. If you look at, I guess the Trump popularity is one thing, but the question is a GOP and GOP being dominant and now being dominated by a rising, what would appear to be a Democratic wave. I wonder if you can speak to whether or not there is anything in on that. And I guess when I say it doesn't matter is I was kind of suggesting we're looking at a Democratic wave and this doesn't matter. That is to say, these primaries in Republican districts just doesn't necessarily find itself relevant.
They're going to be loyal to the Republican Party. What matters is in terms of numbers in November in the election. And the current polls show the Democrats taking the House of Representatives. From Donald Trump's perspective, that is an unmitigated disaster because the House can initiate investigations, proceedings, which are antithetical to what Donald Trump wants. So the question becomes, does he care really about anything more or less than his own reputation, his own power? And we'll have to see. I want to remind you, I know we're going to talk about Iran in a moment. Speaker Johnson made the statement that we're not at war in Iran.
I will get to that in a second, please. If he's unpopular, why are voters choosing his candidates? This is kind of what I was getting at.
It's Indiana. I spent a lot of time in Indiana. My wife is from Indiana. In fact, her cousin's son's wife just won a primary race as a Democratic nominee in a state Senate seat in Indiana, which she may well win. Indiana is a Republican state. It wasn't a long time ago. Remember Evan Bayh and Birch Bayh, and we had a real vital, vibrant Democratic Party. Remember also in Indiana, the great primary that Bobby Kennedy fought against Eugene McCarthy. All I can tell you is his challenge and the Republican Party's challenge is to hold the House of Representatives. So you want to get to the bottom line, cut to the chase, it has to do with redistricting.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, yes.
He won decidedly in his primary. This is
over
for
80%
Ohio.
of the vote. Over 80% of the vote in the primary for the Republican nomination for governor of Ohio.
Yeah. And again, this is so in red states, you're going to get, a domination of these candidates. But ultimately, what John is talking about is the way in which the entire Congress is going to change in November, and so that these representatives, some of them in this case, in Ramaswamy's case, it was a race for governor. They may be relevant in their districts, but overall, your point is, John, the Democrats continue to be favored immensely.
Absolutely, and every day that the price of gas soars, and every day that we are told we're not in a war, yet American troops are stationed overseas, every day that Donald Trump pulls these kinds of things is another nail in the coffin of the Republican Party. Now, here's the question. Does Donald Trump care? Because he's never been a real Republican. He uses the Republican Party. He's used them and abused them. And I think the Republicans understand now that they're really on their own, although they cannot separate themselves from Donald Trump. Once again, a statement was made that clearly the Republican Party is now the party of Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Kim about that last night. I was saying it just doesn't matter to Trump on some level. He's about self-enrichment. He's about power. And ultimately, I think you put it quite well. They're a useful tool, an instrument for him to get both, that is, enrichment and power. But beyond that, I don't think he's necessarily looking for a big Republican legacy of any kind.
No, but understand, and this will be interesting in the next couple of years, Mark, as you and I continue to discuss these things. If the Republicans lose the House of Representatives, the House has the ability to investigate. And the other great question will be the United States Senate. Sherrod Brown was just renominated. He'd been defeated. Now he's back. Will the Democrats have enough votes in the U.S. Senate to prevent Supreme Court nominees? And there's a lot of pressure on Alito and Thomas to bow out now so that the seats can be filled by conservatives. If they decline and they stay there, and in the end, the Democrats take the Senate, it's a real problem for the Republicans.
Now to the war in Iran, Brother Rothman. Let's go with Marco Rubio's announcement that Epic Fury has ended and Project Freedom has begun. This was just yesterday. And then I don't need to tell you what happened to Project Freedom, but I'm still going to tell you what happened to Project Freedom. This is Marco Rubio. Cut 3, please, if you would. Tony, this is Marco Rubio yesterday.
Already many nations privately and some publicly have asked the United States to help free their ships and to restore freedom of navigation in the Straits of Hormuz and this critical artery of global trade. And so President Trump, as he always does, stepped up and answered the calls for their help. And he's directed the United States military to guide these stranded ships to safety, to provide a protective bubble under which they can operate and move product and get themselves out of there and out of harm's way. And this is the first step towards reopening the strait and bringing this regime's last-ditch act of economic arson, bringing that to a close. We're doing it not only because we were asked, but because we're the only ones who can. We have the power to sort of take the steps that we've taken now. Under this president, under President Trump, the United States will help our friends. We're going to stand up to rogue regimes like the one in Tehran, and we're going to be unashamed to use our power and our abilities to project military power in the service of our national interest above all else. Now, what's really important for you to report and for everyone to understand is this is not an offensive operation. This is a defensive operation. And what that means is very simple. There's no shooting unless we're shot at first. Okay? We're not attacking them. But if they're attacking us or they're attacking a ship, you need to respond to that. You're not going to let some fast boat come up on the ship and shoot it up. We're going to respond to it, and we've been successful at it. I don't know what the exact number is, but I know a number of those fast boats have now been targeted, and will continue to be if they pose a threat to our forces. We'll shoot down drones, we'll shoot down missiles, but it's defensive in nature. This is defensive. So if you hear stories about attacks and launching of firing back and forth, it's not back and forth. We are only responding if attacked first. This is a defensive operation, and that's what's occurring here.
So that was the announcement for Project Freedom. That's what it's called, this protection bubble that he describes.
Which is now gone.
But it didn't take long. Here is the way the news broke on Fox News. Cut to Jesse Waters' show, which I know you never miss, Rothman.
Never miss it.
Here is the way it broke just hours after that announcement from Rubio that Project Freedom was on. Now Project Freedom in breaking news is off.
Need to arm and overthrow. We might be closer to a deal than we think. This just in. Fox News alert. The president says, based on the request of Pakistan and other countries, we have mutually agreed that while the blockade will remain in full force and effect, Project Freedom will be paused for a short period of time to see whether or not the agreement can be finalized and signed.
No.
We suspect the president is letting the Iranians save face. The enemy just yesterday said they controlled the strait. That was obviously a lie. And watching the Americans escort ship after ship out of the Gulf and them not being able to do anything about that was going to be humiliating. Not only were they going to lose whatever military prestige they had left in the region, their negotiators weren't going to be able to fight for their position after they lost their last bargaining chip. The commander-in-chief must believe that the Iranians are serious about surrendering if he's going to pause Project Freedom for the sake of a deal.
Okay, so that is the spin from Jesse Waters, that the commander-in-chief, because he does play that 4D chess, he doesn't want the Iranians to be humiliated. You know, he's concerned with humiliating them.
Oh, it's just
that's why he doesn't rage tweet all night about them, whatever yeah.
But you know what was most significant? The ground was undercut on Marco Rubio. Here he is, the Secretary of State of the United States. He holds this major event with the presidential seal because he did the press conference from the press briefing with the White House. And within hours, what he said has no relevance at all. So the question everyone must ask is, if you were an ally and you were sitting down with Marco Rubio, would you care? Because the only person who counts in this are the decisions made in the White House by Donald Trump.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think that was a fair assessment before, and it continues to be a fair assessment. Rubio's taken a backseat to, the president's son-in-law. I mean, Kushner, I think, has taken a more instrumental role in negotiations than has Rubio, the Secretary of State.
And National Security Advisor to the president. He is the first person since Henry Kissinger, the only person after Henry Kissinger to ever hold that dual role. And it goes to show you the lesson we have learned is the power when it comes to foreign policy is vested fully in the president and what happens in the White House.
Play me cut 6. This is the way, again, Axios News was handling it and the way the news spread today on the fact that Project Freedom is off and now there appears to be the primordial ooze of some kind of agreement. Again, if you accept what Trump is saying, I think you fundamentally have two unreliable sources here. The Americans, you can't believe what they're saying about the war and Trump, and the Iranians. You can't believe what they're saying about the war and anything related to it. So here's the way the news broke there on the Axios report.
Well, let's be clear. This is an initial kind of proposal that's come from the U.S., worked up with mediators Pakistan, and is being handed over to Iran. Now, I've not seen specifically what's inside this memo, but there is some reporting from Axios. But firstly, the Pakistanis have been telling me today, sources within Pakistan who are linked with the mediation, that the prospect of a proposal to end the war is very likely in the coming days. So a sign of positivity. Now, what's inside this specific deal? Well, Axios are saying that there will be a declaration to end the war in the region. This will then start a 30-day period of negotiations on a detailed agreement to open the Strait of Hormuz. This also includes a limitation to Iran's nuclear program, potentially stopping enriching uranium to create a nuclear bomb for around 12 to 15 years. This will also lift U.S. sanctions on Iran. It will have restrictions on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. naval blockade would be gradually lifted during that 30-day period. And the U.S. have said that if negotiations collapse, then U.S. forces would be able to restore the blockade or resume military action.
And let me just stop right there and point to something that is huge. Lifting the U.S. sanctions on Iran is massive. In that list of things, that's the thing that jumps out. The rest of the stuff was sort of in the same category of what I think Barack Obama had gotten. It's tough to say because it's a bullet point on a an executive summary of what it was. I mean, you don't really see. My God, the deal that was negotiated by Obama, as you know, John, it was 159 pages, I think. This is just a one-page bullet point thing. But I think the lifting of sanctions on Iran is maybe the biggest headline, because I think they go from the doghouse to the penthouse.
I agree with you 100%. Look, we haven't seen the one-page memorandum. We do know that it does not symbolize an end of hostilities. And I hasten to point out that the bombs still fall in Lebanon, that the war between Israel and Hezbollah continues, and it's a massive operation. By the way, that is not a war between Israel and Lebanon. I think it's one of the points Marco Rubio made, which was actually spot on, is this is a problem with Hezbollah that both Israel and Lebanon have. How that's resolved, I can't tell you, but I can tell you the war is hardly over.
With that, I ask you, what's going to happen? I mean, you can say the war is hardly over, and I agree. But I guess I would ask you the basic question, doesn't Trump want this thing to be over like a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
Absolutely, because it's a test of his power and his resolve. Remember, from Trump's point of view, and this was articulated by Marco Rubio, there is no war anymore. The war is over. And every time the Iranians resist in some way, by the way, they've been continually shooting in the Strait of Hormuz. It is a reflection on the fact that Donald Trump is detached from reality. We also, by the way, and I hasten to point this out, have no idea about the Iranian government. They're now painting a portrait of moderates versus the crazies. Yeah. And that's a completely unrealistic appraisal, because Iran has certain consensus points. I think for the Iranians, the most important single thing to accomplish now is to continue to control the Strait of Hormuz. If they lose that, they really are in trouble.
Well, it's interesting, John, just on that, because I think you're right, of course. They have that implied threat moving forward, don't they? That is to say, we can take the Strait of Hormuz anytime we want. We're the Iranians, we will control it. I thought the attack on the UAE was very significant. I mean, I think maybe it was in our conversation prior to the show. You had mentioned it. The UAE attack, which was just, was it yesterday? I lose track of the time, or maybe 2 days ago. It was on an export center that's outside the Strait of Hormuz, just to give people a sense of the geography. And it's a critical way in which you could work around any kind of toll through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the attacks on the UAE generally, I think, John, you would, I suspect, agree, were part of a way in which Iran is saying, hey, if we get into it with America, you're America now to us, because you're in bed with the Americans. There's no question about it. And even the bases at the American bases have been hit. So I guess what I'm getting at is the implied threat is there, isn't it?
Devastatingly hit. We are just assessing now the damage which was done by Iran. But let me point out another very significant aspect here. UAE is now out of OPEC. And I'm going to tell you that has a huge impact as well. So there's so many layers.
Well, just expand on that. But they've wanted to increase production for years now. They've been part of OPEC and limited. Please expand on that a little bit. It is significant. I agree.
Yes, because now the question is, what will UAE do? Are they going to begin to sell their oil on the world market? By the way, what are we going to do? You know, Donald Trump claims that we produce more oil than any other nation in the world.
We produce more energy than any other nation in the world.
Well, he's talking about oil. He's talking about pumping oil, too. I mean, this guy, either he's delusional or it's hard to say. But the whole point is...
Well, he's not delusional, John. How dare you?
How dare I know. And, the thing is that even the Trump supporters, the Republicans themselves, are becoming uneasy. Oh, wait, I have to mention the ballroom. Why do I mention it? Do you believe Donald Trump? Donald Trump said not a penny, not a dime of taxpayer money is going to be spent on the ballroom. Have you seen the Republican proposal out of the United States Senate? $1 billion with a B, $1 billion. It is the most. Can you imagine?
Well, I mean, you treat it with the absurdity that it probably deserves, and yet it has been rallied around now by his GOP functionaries. There are many legislators in Congress, and they're there. Yes, sir, Mr. President, you need it for your protection and for the protection of all Americans. And we played the ballroom blitz yesterday. One politician after another coming on different cable news channels and saying, we need a ballroom now. My God, the ballroom. If this doesn't underscore the reason for the ballroom, then I don't know what will. And the reality is this ballroom is a grift. It is also a cover. And again, it has been fueled, at least in the early going, by private donations. That in itself is a corrupt game. But what's going to happen to that money? Now you're going to give $1 billion in taxpayer money to make this happen. So even as we laugh at it, as it in its absurdity, as I think it really should be laughed at, it's being treated as a serious proposal on Capitol Hill.
And it is going to be a major part of this campaign. I cannot imagine the Democrats not going after the Republicans on this. And the Republicans.
Tony's got it. Go ahead, Tony. Do you have it? I think here it is. The ballroom blitz
will be a solution for this.
So yes, a ballroom is imperative.
Makes a really good argument for the expanded White House ballroom.
We're going to introduce legislation that would authorize $400 million to be spent to build the presidential ballroom.
I don't know what that price tag or the dollar figure will be, but the ballroom is going to be something that all Americans can enjoy and appreciate.
We're working on legislation to ensure that we are getting the ballroom funded.
Trying to stop a ballroom, it's all just Trump derangement syndrome.
This is just a Trump derangement syndrome issue that they're not able to get over. We need to have that ballroom built.
What needs to be done now?
But I think we got to build that ballroom as soon as possible. Yep. And a big, beautiful ballroom is going to be great for the country.
Yeah, so you get a sense of how they've all rallied around it, John. I mean, this is a thing.
Nuts.
I mean,
and if I were the Democrats, I would be running on the theme of fiscal irresponsibility.
Well, corruption, I think, is what they should run
Absolutely.
on. You're right. As an adjunct to that, yeah.
But do you understand? It wouldn't matter to me if it was a Democrat or a Republican. The destruction of the East Wing of the White House was one of the most appalling attacks on history that I've ever seen. And the fact that the response was muted because it was a fait accompli. And what Donald Trump is trying to do is to make this a fait accompli. And I don't think the American people are going to stand for it.
Please speak English when you're on my show. I don't know what fait accompli. In February, the EPA officially rescinded various clean air standards under the Clean Air Act. And the soil at the East Wing, Kim was quick to point this out, has now found its way to be dumped. This was a story that was reported at the time, but now listen to the twist. Soil that was dumped at this golf course as part of his ballroom project. They have to excavate and they got to move all this stuff. It was tested for toxic chemicals, and it came up positive for these toxic chemicals. The soil was dumped near one of 3 golf courses at East Potomac, tested for lead, chromium, and other toxic metals, and this is insane. So
unconscionable. Unconscionable.
The whole thing is being done off the books like some kind of, backroom mafia deal, and he's going to get away with it, at least in the early going. I don't know. You tell me at the end, make your prediction now. At the end of the Trump presidency, will there be a ballroom? Will there be a rebuild on the East Wing? And will there be an Arc de Trump in the Washington area?
It's more likely you'll see an Arc de Trump. I think that is clear. He wants to finish it as quickly as possible to celebrate the 250th anniversary and his 90th birthday. So he is determined to accomplish all of these things. Look, I'm not a prophet. I only know one thing. The only profit being made in all of this is for Donald Trump and his family. It is the greatest grift I have ever seen. It is beyond comprehension. I tell people, you want to understand what a president should think about? Read Mr. Citizen by Harry Truman, published in 1959. He talked about the fact that he could have profited greatly from his presidency, but he wouldn't do it because the presidency is an institution to be loved and respected. Donald Trump clearly has no love, no respect for the institution of the presidency, or for that matter, for the Constitution of the United States. By the way, we're waiting now for another major Supreme Court statement on birthright citizenship, and I would anticipate that in the next couple of weeks, you and I will be talking about that to some great extent.
You know what I'd like to do with you, John? And I've never shared.
You haven't talked to my wife about this, have you?
I want to take a cognitive test with Rothman. I want to be able to brag like the president brags about his mental acuity and his abilities when it comes to mental clarity. It inspires me. Yeah. You know, maybe he's right. Nobody else has taken one. Give me cut 13 on the way out. I want Rothman to consider taking this test with me, Tony.
In my opinion, anybody running for president or vice president should take a cognitive test. And no president has ever taken one except me. I've taken 3 of them, and I've aced each one. One in the first administration, 2 over here. And whenever they get a little sassy, like, does he still have it? Does he still have what it takes? I say, all right, I'll take another one. And they are hard. There are many people in this room I know that are smart. They're not going to ace them. There are many people standing back there, the fake news media. I'd like to have them. You know, the first question is very easy, and they always show the first question is, you have a lion, a bear, an alligator, and what's another good? A squirrel, okay? Which is the squirrel? So they show that question, and then the first 4 or 5 questions they get a little more difficult. By the time you get to the middle, they're tough.
Yeah, you're going to be sweating by the middle.
You know, I'm not worried about it. You know how I know? Because every Wednesday when I appear on the Mark Thompson program, I know that my cognitive abilities are going to be tested thoroughly, completely, and as long as you continue to allow me to participate with you, I know that I would pass any cognitive test.
Shut up and tell me where the squirrel is, okay, hotshot? Yeah. Do you see the squirrel? Exactly my point. All right, you don't pass. You're Good day, sir. You and Trump both struggling.
No, the only squirrel I see is the one on the White House.
Yes, all right. You are wonderful. You're our dear friend, and we look forward to the next visit.
And I urge, before I close out, I just want to make sure everybody supports the Mark Thompson program. I always put in this plug when I'm given the opportunity, and even when I'm not given the opportunity. Support the Mark Thompson program. And may I say, I enjoy more than I can say watching before the show, the setup for the show, which I know many of your listeners enjoy as well. So I just want to say to Mark, to Kim, to the whole gang, what a pleasure it is to be able to participate in this great adventure, cognitively or not.
Well, that's I loved everything about that, but please don't mention Kim and the rest of the crew. It's about me, John, and I've told you that before.
Do you know who I am?
I'm just saying.
I'm kind of a big deal.
But we love you, and we look forward to the next time. Around the Political World with John Rothman is his podcast. Check him out, John Rothman. Bye-bye, John.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.